Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Sunday, August 18th. Over the next few days and into much of next week, we will continue to have wind to deal with across the Great Basin. The gusty winds and dry conditions will mostly be confined to the western half of the Great Basin, including Idaho, but also extending east into eastern Idaho and Wyoming. Thunderstorms will still remain over the eastern half of the Great Basin, predominantly in Utah, although we will see some decreasing coverage as we go through the next couple of days. Still, these thunderstorms will be wet. Also, lightning will move at times into eastern Idaho and Wyoming and will be bringing some moisture along with it, along with higher humidity. Precipitation over the last 24 hours, we saw a significant amount of lightning from eastern Nevada across nearly all of Utah, with the exception of far eastern and northeast Utah. These thunderstorms were definitely on the wet side, and we saw rainfall amounts above a half inch or above an inch in many locations over the western half of Utah. Thunderstorms were spotty up in Idaho along with the moisture. Great Basin fire activity yesterday was heavy with the significant amount of lightning, and we had most of our new starts across eastern Nevada and into Utah, although most of these staying on the small side at the present time. We did have a couple of growing fires develop yesterday or continue anywhere from southern and eastern Idaho into Wyoming. We also saw continued growth on our large fires. Over the last 7 to 14 days, again, most of the moisture, all of it really, remains over the eastern half of the Great Basin with drier conditions across much of Nevada. This does not include the moisture we saw yesterday into eastern Nevada and Utah, and then also drier spots in southwest and west central Idaho. The ERC point map shows these conditions well, with ERCs continuing to drop and remain well below the 50th percentile in Utah, and still remaining on the higher side over western and northern Nevada up into Idaho and even over into parts of Wyoming. Although our live fuel moistures are still low in many of these areas where it does show some of our ERCs on the low side in the north. Currently, some of our ERCs, again, looking at western Wyoming, where we do have a couple of large fires there, ERCs are low, but will be trending upwards. But again, our live fuel moisture is definitely on the lower side in parts of Wyoming. And then over western sides of the Great Basin, which has obviously been on the drier side, ERCs are above the 90th percentile, and they will tick downwards even though we're not expecting any moisture. Over the western portion of Nevada, we will see cooler temperatures as troughs continue to move through, however, still those windy conditions. The satellite image from this morning shows the trough of low pressure off the northwest coast, providing our windy conditions for the Great Basin, and then high pressure is now pushed well to the east over eastern Colorado and New Mexico, but still allowing that moisture to stream north across Utah and the eastern half of the Great Basin. Our smoke impacts, again, not as much smoke as we have been dealing with earlier in the month. However, we still have some smoke streaming north from some California fires, and also our own fire activity in the central Idaho mountains, which was very active yesterday, producing quite a bit of smoke the next couple of days as these winds continue. So for today, we will again see that moisture over the eastern half of the region for another significant round of thunderstorms. Otherwise, drier and windy conditions continue over western areas, so we do have a slew of high risk for these gusty winds where they combine with low relative humidity over the Sierra Front into central and eastern Nevada and also up into central Idaho. So although today humidity will not be as low over central Idaho, we will still see those RHs drop into the teens to around 20%. The much lower humidity will remain down south in the single digits in Nevada, and this is where our strongest winds will be. We'll see gusts in the 30s and approaching 40 miles per hour for central and eastern Nevada. And although we haven't had any large fires recently, we have had plenty of initial attack and lightning, so certainly could see some holdovers starting to pop up, especially in the coming days as this air really dries out. Over central Idaho, obviously this is where we have a lot of large fire, so although winds don't look as impressive as further south, we will continue to see those wind gusts in the 20s to around 30 miles per hour, which will continue to be problematic for those large fires. Temperatures today will cool a little bit. We will see highs only in the upper 80s to around 90 degrees in the valleys, with the exception of the far south. And then thunderstorms today, again, expecting more lightning in Utah and then some isolated cells, possibly into south central Idaho, where we do have a new large fire, and also could see a couple strikes in the Salmon Chalice today. As we move into Monday, dry air continues to remain in place across Nevada with those breezy conditions in between the low pressure off the northwest coast, although it is starting to lift a little bit further north, so it looks like Sunday today will be our strongest wind day, and winds might back off a bit on Monday, but still remaining breezy across areas where we have large fires from Idaho and then also down into Nevada. Relative humidity, a lot more single digits, even creeping north up into southwest Idaho and lower teens up into parts of the northern Sawtooth and the Boise. And you can see on Monday our winds still remain gusty, even pick up a little bit as that area of low pressure tracks further north. We will see a slight decrease in Nevada with wind speed, but winds will be picking up into Idaho. So again, a very gusty with winds in the 30s, possibly even approaching 40 miles per hour. Otherwise, that moisture remains in eastern areas. Temperatures remain on the cool side, or still at least around 90 degrees for highs in the valleys. And then thunderstorms start to decrease across Utah on Monday, but still remain active in Wyoming. So we could see those gusty outflow winds affecting ongoing incidents, but also some moisture with brief rainfall. As we move into Tuesday, we kind of remain in more of this generally breezy situation with still gusty winds anywhere from western and northern Nevada up into Idaho and Wyoming. However, looking at the wind speeds, they will taper off a bit in central Idaho and eastern Nevada, but they will be picking up in eastern Idaho and Wyoming. So more of those gusts in the mid-30s to around 40 miles per hour. Otherwise, just very dry over western areas and even seeing some drying trends in Utah temporarily. Temperatures, again, still remaining on the cool side. Thunderstorm coverage will decrease. And then the 3-day amount of precipitation. Again, Utah continues to get thunderstorms, so we'll continue to see those wetting rains, especially in the higher elevations. Could see some areas of wetting rains in western Wyoming over the next couple of days as that moisture tracks north, and then even over eastern Idaho, some spotty precip. Otherwise dry on the western half of the Great Basin, including the western half of Idaho. As we move into the middle of the week, we will continue to see breezy winds day in and day out through all of this week. But they will fluctuate with location and wind speed as far as what areas will be the strongest, but still drying and breezy conditions over central and northern areas of the Great Basin on Wednesday. This continues on Thursday, so we do continue our high risk. But this area of low pressure off the west coast is really starting to deepen later in the week, and by Friday starts to swing eastward. So we don't have any areas of high risk for winds Friday or Saturday, but that does not mean winds will be decreasing. They will actually probably start to increase on Friday as this low pushes through. But we'll continue to watch that. It's a ways out, and we do have some questions with relative humidity as this low moves inland. We could see some decent moisture moving into parts of western Idaho, but also on Saturday is really when the bulk of the moisture moves through Idaho. So we could see some decent rainfall for some areas that really need it in central Idaho, but that kind of remains to be seen. So we'll continue to watch this system later in the week. 7-day total precip, Utah continues to get more moisture, but you can see that moisture in Idaho heading towards the weekend with that area of low pressure that moves through. So we will see temperatures continue to drop going into the weekend, and also that moisture we'll continue to watch, but there are at least some promising periods, especially on Saturday for Idaho and Wyoming. Otherwise, the 8 to 14-day outlook does not look overly impressive with relief for the Great Basin, just warmer and not bringing a whole lot of precipitation. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.